Last week, the defenses in my top 5 averaged 9.2 fantasy points per game and 8.2 inside the top 10. By the time you finish this video, you'll know exactly what defense to start in week 3 to get a win for yourself. And I'll be making a video like this every single week of the season, so make sure you're subscribed if you're new so you do not miss out. Starting with number 1 in the S tier, it is going to be the Green Bay Packers defense. Micah Parsons, welcome to the squad. You have completely changed this defense around. They've always had talent, but now they're putting it into place against this Cleveland Browns offense, which is amazing in fantasy points allowed to defenses. The Browns are averaging 16.5 points per game. That's on the low side, only 322 yards. I have their floor at 7.2 points, and I think their ceiling can be all the way up at 10.5. Start them as your number 1. Also in the S tier, we're getting the Seattle Seahawks. A little bit worse of an option here, but get an amazing matchup against the New Orleans Saints. They aren't as negative as people expect. Spencer Rattler has actually been doing decent, but this team is only averaging 17.5 points and allow a lot of pressure on the quarterback with a lackluster offensive line. I have their floor at 7 points and their ceiling at 10.2. And dropping it down to the A tier, you can still start all of these defenses. We're going to have the Minnesota Vikings, one of the better internal units in this top 5 here. They're getting a matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals, who are playing without Joe Burrow. Can Jake Browning support these wide receivers and be fantasy viable? That's the question we're going to find out. It is not like the Bengals offensive line has been able to hold anything against sacks. They're averaging 19.3 fantasy points per game and 3 sacks allowed. It is an amazing defense, an amazing internal unit. I have their ceiling for just under 10 points, but about 8 on average. Going into the A tier with our second defense, Indianapolis Colts. And this defense is still on waiver wire for a lot of people, so go check right now if they're there. Guys, if you do appreciate this video, make sure to hit that like button. I do this every single week, but it means so much to me as a creator. It's free and it just helps me out a lot. Indianapolis Colts here against the Tennessee Titans. We know how bad this offense has been. Cam Ward is only averaging 143 passing yards a game. He's put up 12 points on the Broncos, 19 points on the Rams, and the Colts are allowing some of the lowest yardage to opposing offenses. I have their ceiling all the way up at 10.3 fantasy points, but expected around 8. And keeping it in this A tier with my 6th overall defense, the Atlanta Falcons getting the Carolina Panthers matchup. This team is allowing only 15 points per game to opposing offenses. We know Bryce Young likes to turn the ball over, and they also have a great pressure rate on the quarterback. The Atlanta Falcons middle linebackers are holding it down, and this defense as a whole is only allowing 230 yards per game to opposing offenses. Not to mention they're averaging 3.5 sacks and an interception a game now against a more or less terrible offense with the Carolina Panthers that only have Ted McMillan to save them and a 5'10 quarterback. But keeping it in this tier, there are so many top tier defenses this week. The Kansas City Chiefs, and I've seen this one on waivers too. They get a matchup against the New York Giants. Last week is not going to continue. The bright side for the Giants is they had a rookie offensive lineman come in and actually help this team. When he came in, that's when the 40-plus points were scored and the overtime happened. This team is not going to do that every single week. The Chiefs have a great pressure rate on the quarterback. They get a lot of sacks. I have their ceiling just under 8 points. And dropping it down to the next tier, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are a bit of a pass funnel of a defense, but you're going against the New York Jets, who are starting presumably Tyrod Taylor. The Jets offensive line definitely has its issues, and Justin Fields has one of the lowest time to pass in the pocket in the entire NFL. Tyrod Taylor probably won't be able to do much with that either. Not to mention they have one of the lower implied team totals of the week. There shouldn't be a lot of scoring. But the Houston Texans next in this tier, who get a matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars in an away game. And this defense has quietly been very, very good thanks to Derek Stingley locking down the number 1 wide receiver. If he's going to be on Brian Thomas, which he will, who has already had his problems catching balls, he's only caught 5 of his 19 total targets. A team that's averaging 2.5 sacks could be very, very good against his lackluster offensive line. And we can't leave the Pittsburgh Steelers out of this video, even if they have looked somewhat bad so far this year. They're allowing some of the most fantasy points to opposing running backs, aka you might want to be able to start Ramondre Stevenson. They are averaging over 3 sacks per game and almost an interception per game, so there is an opportunity for them to score points off of those and not just keeping this game low scoring. I have their potential ceiling up to 9 points, but their floor at 6. This is where it starts getting a little bit risky in this tier because some very good matchups are coming. We have the Denver Broncos, who disappointed last week. They were one of my top defenses, now coming into a matchup against the Los Angeles Chargers, playing against a quarterback in Justin Herbert, who has honestly looked like an MVP candidate. Luckily, we do have Patrick Surtain fully healthy, and as long as he is here, this defense is one of the best, averaging almost 3 sacks per game, half an interception, and a great pressure rate on the quarterback. Dre Greenlaw will be out again for this matchup, so it definitely brings down their upside and why they're ranked this low. And we also have the Cincinnati Bengals in this tier, who get a matchup against Carson Wentz and the Minnesota Vikings. Now, this defense hasn't been great itself. They're allowing almost 350 yards a game to opposing offenses, but how good really is Carson Wentz, and can he keep the ball out of the opponent's hands? that is what we're betting on in this matchup for the defense. Their floor is lower at 5 points because they do have some holes, but I have their ceiling up at almost 8 points. And next up, we have the Washington Commanders, who are bumped up because of this matchup against Geno Smith and the Raiders. Last week, Geno Smith threw 3 interceptions and got sacked a considerable amount, completing only 24 of his 43 total passing attempts. And yes, last week, the Chargers defense is absolutely amazing, but the Commanders defense is not that much worse. Now, they are going to be missing Jaden Daniels, which means this game will probably be closer, but this is another team averaging almost 3 sacks per game, so the fantasy points will come from that. And if the Raiders so happen to not play well with a Brock Bowers that is banged up, I have their ceiling almost at 9 points, followed by the Dallas Cowboys, who get a matchup against Caleb Williams and the Bears. This team so far has not been great on defense, but this matchup does prove some upside with DeAndre Swift coming into this game with an injury and them just getting blown out by the Lions offense. The Cowboys are good. Can they support it and be viable in this matchup? We will find out, which is why they're this low in my rankings, followed by the Philadelphia Eagles in this tier. The Los Angeles Rams is a very good matchup, so they're falling down my rankings, but this defense is good. Then we have the New England Patriots against the Pittsburgh Steelers here, which is a positive matchup. Aaron Rodgers threw more interceptions than he did touchdowns last week. That is the Aaron Rodgers we can expect for season long. If you look at week 1, that was a fluke of a matchup. The main overarching reason why the Patriots are this low is because they do not have Christian Gonzalez. He is questionable coming into this week, probably won't play. If he does, this defense might just move up that much higher. I have their ceiling projection at 8 points and their floor down right at 5. And we follow that with the Arizona Cardinals, who get their turn against the San Francisco 49ers, who are dealing with Mac Jones at quarterback. He didn't look terrible in his first start, but it is definitely not positive with this team that just upgraded every single aspect of their defense in the draft. They have potential to get some interceptions, and I like that here to give us some fantasy points. I have their ceiling just under 9 points as well. And a sneaky defense here, if you need them off the waiver wire, is the Jacksonville Jaguars, who get their turn against the Houston Texans. Now, this offensive line is absolutely terrible, possibly one of, if not the worst offensive lines in the NFL. They are allowing almost 3 or 4 sacks per game on CJ Stroud. The pressure rate is really, really good against this team, which means downfield, Nico Collins can't get that many opportunities, and you lock him up with Travis Hunter if he will be playing on him. This is a good matchup to get some fantasy points, even if the Texans do score, which they have not been able to do so far this year. And we follow that with the Saints here, who have actually been pretty decent in getting pressure on the quarterback. They're the overall defense number 2 in sacks with 4 per game, and now they get theirs against a pretty decent matchup here in the Seattle Seahawks. Last week, Sam Darnold threw 2 interceptions. We don't have Zach Charbonnet in this matchup, meaning it's all on Kenneth Walker, who has slowly been returning from his foot injury. Can this offense succeed against a Saints defense? It is very possible that they do, but I like the opportunity for Sam Darnold to throw some interceptions and possibly get some sacks here as well. And some defenses that I like that are still for some reason on the waiver wire, guys. The Chiefs, under 50% rostered for some reason. People are worried this much about the Giants offense. It's not going to be as good as we saw last week. The pressure rate is amazing. I also do like the Atlanta Falcons defense. You can see how high they are in my rankings because the Carolina Panthers are such a bad offense with holes in it. This defense is still rostered in under 60% of leagues. And the last defense you can pick up off the waiver wire that is a valid option for you this week is going to be the Arizona Cardinals, who get the San Francisco matchup, which we just talked about. That is my full defensive rankings for this week, guys. Let me know what defense you're starting, and I will see you in the next video coming next week. All glory to the man above.